And we are privileged to have a colleague from Bahrain Polytechnic, Dr. Philippe Wendewiel. And Dr. Philippe will be speaking to us about fit for purpose higher education for work readiness, myth or fact. Wow, that sounds really interesting. So I would like to welcome Dr. Philippe to share his thoughts and insights with us. All the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. It's very nice to be here. Indeed, my talk is going to be today about fit for purpose higher education for work readiness, because the discussion that was had in the previous sessions on the previous days when we had I just got back from class, when we had the conference, there was quite a bit of concern around the work readiness of people for the 21st century workplace, and to what extent that higher education institutions are able to or falling short in addressing that issue. And I think what I'm reporting on today is an approach of teaching and learning that indeed allows for that particular type of developing of work readiness. So very quick bit of information around the literary context that frames this study. I'm not going to go through all the bits and pieces of it, but in terms of the fit for purpose debate, that debate is alive and well. And what we see is that a lot of higher education institutions have adopted the term, particularly the term employability, and that has operational and strategic importances, but it is not free of critique or resistance, particularly towards academic freedom, but also the reduction of potentially the higher education capacity to nurture the ability to assume critical stances in thinking and things like that. There's various alternatives to traditional approaches, and these are trying to address those competencies of relevant 21st century workplace competencies that are important. Yet the literature shows that there is still a requirement for illumination on the context. So when we're talking about employability, we need to realize that this is a notion that is extremely complex in the sense that it covers intrinsic, actionable, and extrinsic factors. It is not only about the acquisition or possession of enabling competencies and knowledge, but it is also about a wider frame that indicates senses of socio-cultural capital, that takes into consideration world and local realities where individuals operate in terms of success. What is the relativity in terms of the available labor force or the labor market that is based there, and what is the institutional brand that graduates carry when they're moving forward? So looking into personal and professional disposition and identity are really key in this part. So when we are looking at higher education institutions and how they are trying to evidence this employability, then typically we see that they are using proxy constructs. That means that they are going to look for particular indicators of destination data that are going to help them to argue we are developing employability. However, they poorly typically capture that multidimensional notion of employability, and they risk to arrive at very short-sighted prioritizations of efforts, which on the one hand does not do the institution any service, but on the other hand also taints the ability for individuals, parents or students to make decisions around which institution they want to be part of. So the literature calls for a more comprehensive approach by widening the spectrum of measures and by figuring out maybe a more longitudinal approach to this. So the study that I've undertaken and that I'm currently still undertaking is in context of Bahrain Polytechnic and its Bachelor of Business Marketing Studies. Now, the Bachelor of Business Marketing Studies at Bahrain Polytechnic offers an authentic multidisciplinary learning experience in collaboration with up to now over 150 industry partners through project-based learning. So what we are doing is we are embedding what we have identified as 8 important employability skills throughout the full educational experience that our students are going through. And we have done a lot of research in relation to getting data on what the learners experience, what the faculty experiences, and what the industry partners experience. But the missing piece of the puzzle is really looking at these alumni and looking at what is their experience of employability. And that is what I want to report on today. So the approach that I've used for this from a methodological point of view is describing the lived experience of employability through a phenomenological study where I've done semi-structured interviews with 9 Bahrain Polytechnic marketing alumni, and the criterion sampling approach that was used in order to put these people in my interview sample was a minimum of 2 years of experience working, a gender makeup that represents the program's gender makeup, and the academic performance. We have looked at alumni that graduated both at the extremely high academic performance all the way down to satisfactory academic performance. Unfortunately, for this study, I haven't been able yet to identify any unemployed graduates because at the moment they all decline the interview. But hopefully later on, I'll be able to capture their viewpoints as well. So what we came up with out of evaluating the narratives of the and the thematic analysis that came out of the interviews was that we have really 4 areas of experiences that came out. The first experiences that were reported were about securing a job and workplace transition, then experiences around when they are on the job and what type of work they are doing and how that works for them, future perspectives around where they see themselves moving forward, and then their self-view as a marketeer. We also asked them some questions around the program relevance, the program that they have gone through at Bahrain Polytechnic, and what type of hard, soft competencies that they saw were useful, and what were particular gaps for us to move forward. And that led us to an identification of a variety of aspects from our process and a variety of aspects from the focuses and the goals that we put into our program in order to start crafting that narrative around what is the employability experience and how can we make an argument that what we are doing here at Bahrain Polytechnic through our consistently authentic and experiential learning through project-based learning, how that makes sense in order to deliver a favorable employability experience. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through thematic categories of all the 4 parts, the 4 parts that I've identified. And I'm going to reflect some percentages in terms of frequencies of occurring of interview transcriptions. So what people said and how often that type of conversation came out, that is what is going to be mentioned on the left-hand side of the slide. And then on the bottom-hand side of the slide, the program attributes, I'm going to consistently list which program attributes that the narrative brought up. So without further ado, let's start with the securing a job, right? The first start. When our alumni were looking for jobs, what they said was that they found the transition relatively easy, in the sense that a good few of them said the result of their capstone project, which was working closely to a company, led them to a job. Now, they also mentioned that the institutional brand carries a lot of weight when they are searching for jobs in the market, and they were at the very beginning very much focusing on gaining experience. Now, they felt that the marketing function was rather nascent and undervalued, but the experiential learning that they had gone through in their program, that carried very well in an interview because they were able to talk about their abilities, their competencies, what they were able to do, and how that made them a likely candidate for the job. In terms of transitioning into the workplace, there they felt that they were well prepared with no surprises, and their ability to adapt was really instrumental there. And that is something that they very much learned throughout their learning experience at the Polytechnic, because we constantly pushed them out of their comfort zone. They realized that there is a need to, but they also had comfort with exploring how to fit in, and they felt that their soft competencies and their ability to self-study were very pivotal in this part. They also reported on a particular shock in respect with the work culture, where some identified that the reality of work is different from what they were told it would be. So in the program, we prepared them for a particular workplace. And then some of them that entered into that workplace, they said, well, what we experienced was not really what you guys told us it was going to be. Now then when we move at their narrative around what happens at work, in terms of their competence at work, the alumni found that their problem-solving ability, field-specific and generic competencies, these were the key things that really played in their favor in terms of showing their competence at work. Learning, again, was pushed forward by the individuals as saying, this is really something that helps us to be able to or show our competence at work and move forward. They felt that they were shifting the status quo in the marketing field, which aligns with the notion that the marketing field in Bahrain is rather nascent. And they also described their self-viewed competence as above average. Now, the BP learning experience, or the Bahrain Polytechnic learning experience, was reported as building confidence, a strong foundation, and particularly being really resilient in the face of adversity. But then when looking at how they saw themselves as creating value for the organizations that they were part of, again, it focused very much on the idea of the problem-solving process that they have gathered as they were studying here, their ability to plan and organize, and their ability to be objective-focused and make informed decisions. The digital marketing competence was something that was very favorable for them to showcase their value creation at work and also their ability to work with a variety of other types of technologies. So they identified themselves as strong communicators, and they felt that they were far more productive than their peers. Now, in dealing with seniors, there the alumni felt extremely comfortable with dealing with seniors. And that is not surprising, because the projects that they have been working on were always projects that were sourced together with senior management in organizations. So they would continuously interface with that senior management in organizations, and they recognized that confidence, taking perspective, and communication were key points in being comfortable dealing with these seniors. At times, however, they feel undervalued by seniors because, and later on that will come forward, they do not always feel that hard work and ambition is being appreciated to the level that they would like that to be appreciated. Now then, moving on to the future perspectives, lifelong learning, adaptability, and self-marketing, they were the key things that came out of there. So they very much recognized the notion and the need to continuously learn, to be adaptable, and to be able to market themselves if they want to move forward in their career. They study the opportunities and they engage with them, right, in consultation with outsiders, but there is very much an understanding of that they are taking the onus of moving their future forward. Growth was something that was continuously highlighted as very important and very much the focus of their future perspective. And they want to feel part of a company. And I think that is something that is particularly relevant to the generation of millennials and digital natives. Some of them were mentioning that they want to become an expert in a particular niche, and they felt that investing in the self was definitely something that was worthwhile. Now then, moving on to the seeking professional growth, there again, the idea of learning to learn is something that was very much pointed at as key, whereby taking opportunity and stepping outside of the comfort zone were really looked at as fundamental. Now, in terms of their professional growth, they said taking on more work is something that helps us to grow professionally, engaging in formal further study, creating a clear professional pathway for ourselves, engaging across a variety of disciplines, and not being afraid to move into trial and error situations. Working in challenging environments was noted as highly beneficial in order to professional growth, and their opportunity was by some mentioned as somewhat limited in organizations. Others were saying they were not necessarily that clear of where they wanted to go. So we still had a fairly balanced view around, on the one hand, a clear idea of how do I move forward, but on the other hand, still some doubt in relation to, do I really have those opportunities, and am I clear on where I want to go? In terms of promotional opportunities, where they presented with them, well, 89% of the participants, they expressed that career aspirations is really something that they have, and they want to move companies if they feel that there is nothing left to gain. So the marketing field was identified as having extremely strong potential in terms of career development, and half of the respondents, they indicated that they had gone through a natural career progression. They also mentioned that patience and an active push is important for engaging with promotional opportunities, where clear communication is fundamental to that. They also mentioned that ambition and hard work was not always perceived as extremely valuable by the people around them that would offer them promotional opportunities. However, they felt the importance of salary growth, professional and personal growth to be extremely important. In terms of career progression, what are we talking about here? Well, the alumni, they feel that the transition to be driven by performance in combination with the initiative to seek out opportunity. So they very much believe that if we are performing well, we will be able to progress in our career, and that is combined with the initiative to seek out opportunities. So waiting for something to fall into the lap was not the approach that they were looking into, or that they were considering as the right way to go. It was more about, okay, if I work really hard and if I take the opportunity, then I will be able to move forward. They're not settling for average. And they are not, 22% of them had not yet experienced progression, but they are exploring options, and some of them were considering the public sector. So when we are, hold on just a second. Right. Now then the last piece of the puzzle was the self-view as the marketeer, where the individual felt strong ownership over and confidence over the role that they have, and they recognize that continuous learning is key to that. They very much see themselves as problem solvers, and they are open to explore the future role and identity, how this can evolve over time and where this can take them. Contracting work was not favored by half of the respondents, whereas the other half said that they had already engaged in this or were interested in doing so. In terms of program relevance, the program relevance was considered to present a strong foundation whereby the process of problem solving in authentic learning experiences was really key. Right? So the alumni, they also felt that they needed to educate their seniors and their peers in the state of the art of marketing. Again, pointing at that notion of the marketing field being a little bit nascent in Bahrain. Real marketing activities are undervalued in the sense that they said, well, there is still a very simplistic way how marketing is being approached in the current climate. In terms of hard competencies, digital marketing, research into the target market, metrics, and ability to build a campaign were highlighted as very prevalent, with a series of gaps that were identified, which I will talk about a little bit later on. In terms of soft competencies, the key soft competencies that stood out were communication, initiative, problem solving, process thinking, planning and organizing, teamwork, and technology, with again a series of soft competencies that could have been addressed better by our program. Now, when we are mapping out these program attributes that I mentioned at the very beginning with the narrative, then we see that in terms of the process, the key aspects of the program that really work well in developing their employability as a positive experience are result orientation, problem focus, having high expectations of the learners, developmental authentic experiential learning, and active industry collaboration involving senior management. Focus and the goals of the program that are highly relevant are fostering long life learning and ambition for growth, professional identity, and employability competencies focus with a variety of sub aspects there around ownership, confidence, comfort zone expansion, etc. The progression of the program, obviously the alumni that we interviewed were people who had been out of the program for a little while, and when they identified these gaps in the program, we went back and we looked at what have we changed since these guys have left the program. And what we saw was that in order to figure out that work-life balance that they felt was a little bit missing, and general experiences or further general experience that was so important for their argument towards securing a job, we have increasingly pushed for authentic learning experience that evolve progressively towards proximity with the environments and reflective practice. So throughout our program, we are continuously using authentic learning experiences, but we are pushing our learners closer and closer to the real work environment, and including a lot of reflective practice into that. In terms of implementation, that was considered to be a little bit missing in the program. At the moment, the program progresses expectation of implementation of marketing solutions with evaluation of the results as they are going through their program. So every semester that they are going through the program, there is more and more focus on actually implementing solutions and evaluating those solutions in terms of its results. Events marketing was also something that was mentioned as a shortcoming, and we have since introduced an events management course in the program that has been running now for 3 semesters. Also, the industry marketing tools that were considered to be not necessarily at the cutting edge, we have further included more digital marketing tools that are currently used in the industry. Networking, expectation management, and negotiation were also points that were highlighted as potentially having too little an address in the program. We now have a stronger focus since 2 years on marketing management around networking within the organization to achieve marketing objectives. And then finally, pitching and financials. There we are now talking about a program that consistently includes the idea of pitching and solution pitching as part of the evaluation. So idea pitching and solution pitching are now becoming a fundamental part of the evaluation and the assessment. So conclusions that we can draw and some preliminary selected propositions that we can move forward for future research is, first of all, that the employability experience was considered as positive and shows to be rooted in various dimensions of learning experience at Bahrain Polytechnic. Secondly, the focus on soft competencies in the program has really borne its fruit with respect to continuous development of professional identity and professional capacity. Thirdly, authentic and experiential learning really helps in terms of finding the job, but also creating value within organizations. Whereas the curriculum with high expectations, that is industry driven and industry trend aligned, really nurtures confidence and performance capacity, but it also risks a level of disappointments when they are ending up in a situation where perhaps the cutting edge is not really that much available. Developmental approach towards personal and professional transformation, growth, and ambition is really something that we found to be nurturing the lifelong learning disposition. And finally, professional identity is strongly guided by the problem-solving ability and ownership of growth. So, future research, what I want to draw out of this and how I want to take this forward is, first of all, this was a pilot study that we have used or that we have enacted at Bahrain Polytechnic. And we are hoping that we can replicate the study across other program alumni to validate and perhaps expand or advance some of the propositions that came out of this. And on the other hand, we are going to look into the development of a more quantitative instrument based on the emergent themes and the propositions, so that we can start generalizing that data based on the lived experience that has been described here today. So I welcome any questions. If you are interested in anything with a little bit more detail, I'm very happy to assist. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Philippe. That was indeed an insightful topic. And we are so grateful that you brought knowledge to us from another perspective. And I see some thought-provoking questions here. And the first question we have from Nehal Ahmed, who requested, please suggest the best strategies that we can apply in the practical classroom situations to engage the students maximum in learning process.
Okay, that's a very good question, because when we are talking about learning, indeed, it is all about engagement. The more you get your learners engaged, the more that they will be able to start taking ownership and that they will start being really involved in what is happening. I think what is key in terms of that is really focusing on authentic learning experiences that are relevant to them, right? Sometimes we have to make them relevant to the learners by telling them this is how this sits in your potential future career. Or sometimes we have to pick topics that are truly of interest to them. So what we are doing at Polytechnic here is we are trying to source clients that our students can relate to, that our students feel a connection with, that our students feel excited about when they are working on that particular project. So that is one side, that sense of excitement and that sense of being bought into particular projects. Another element that I find very important is that you are putting the onus on the learner in order to justify decisions that they are making and giving them the freedom to come up with their opinions, their ideas, but guiding them through a process of forming their ideas and developing their ideas. And that has really helped us to develop engagement. So setting high expectations and really putting them on the spot and saying, okay, like for instance, every other class, what I'm asking my guys to do is present the work that you have. So we are talking about the project. Everything that we are teaching is about that project. And we are saying week by week, show us the progress that you have made. If there is no progress, then we close the class off. And it is embarrassing to them because they say, well, I had nothing to say and the class is over and I'm in an awkward position here, right? That takes maybe 1 or 2 times, and then all of a sudden you start seeing a shift in that engagement because they truly feel bought into the program, because they understand that what they are asked to do is going to be their decision, is going to be their way of moving forward. And we are getting them to feel excited about it. Now, a last point that I want to make in terms of engagement is what is important is that we normalize failure, and that we normalize making mistakes, and that we have constructive discussions and learning discussions around mistakes and failure. Rather than always looking at the positive side of things, we should be able to normalize the conversation around what does it mean to make a mistake and how do we learn from that, rather than constantly hammering on the positive aspects that are playing. So that would be my short answer to that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much indeed. Sevgi Khan has a question for you. How much of the skills required in the process of securing a job do you value most and teach in the Polytechnic?
Okay, well, the way that we go about that is really from the very beginning, we talk about professional identity and we talk about the workplace. So what we are doing is we are treating our students as trainee marketeers, and we are operating as a marketing agency. So we take the role on as senior consultants and we tell them you are now in a marketing trainee program. And in that trainee program, you need to start understanding yourself as a young professional. And you need to start communicating to us not only about what you can do, but also about who you are. And when you start getting them to talk about who they are as young professionals, where they want to go, what they like, and how they want to move forward, you start having very interesting conversations around, well, what type of a job would you like to do? How would you go about that? And what are things that are going to be useful for you? Now, what we require them to do every semester is that we ask them to build their CV based on the learning experience that they have gone through. So pretty much at the end of the program, which is a 4-semester program, they end up with roughly 18 months of work experience where they on their CV note out a variety of achievements that they have done based on the project for a real client. So they are able to go into an interview to talk about what they have done. And they can naturally talk about it because they are very used to talking about it, because they have pitched a solution, they have dealt with the seniors, they have dealt with us, and they have been grilled in various occasions to meaningfully express why they have done certain things, what were the results, and how does that work. So really what we are crafting is a certain level of natural disposition to talk about their abilities and to talk about their competence and to talk about their professional identity, who they are as a marketeer and how they would solve problems. And that really carries a long way in relation to finding jobs. Now, on the other hand, what we also help them with is networking, in the sense that we make all our clients available to all our alumni and all our graduates. And at the same time, continuously, when we are having conversations with industry, we network for our alumni and we ask people from these companies to tell us, well, what type of people are you looking for? And we kind of almost operate as an HR agency that is pushing forward CVs and helps people to get that interview. But once they have that interview, we are confident that they are able to carry that conversation because they're very well self-aware of their strengths, their weaknesses, their passions, what they like, what they don't like, and how they see themselves as young marketeers.
Thank you, Dr. Philippe. I think you would agree then with Dr. Tamim Ansari's observation. He has said here, I think we need to focus on what the students are capable of becoming through the jobs that they choose to do, rather than on the skills that they are expected to possess for the job.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, right? When we are looking at professional behaviors, right? What we want to see is we want to see people being comfortable in their job, in what they do. We want them to be able to grow. We want them to be able to be passionate and to be able to be excited and wake up to work and say, I'm happy that I'm going to go to work. So obviously, if they are finding areas that they are good at, then these are things that we definitely need to foster. Right? On the other hand, we also need to have conversations with our learners around what are other areas that will increase your ability to become employable. So we are trying to find a certain balance between, on the one hand, celebrating the positives and really asking these individuals to leverage their strong capabilities, but at the same time, semester at a time, identify on a certain amount of these employability competencies, if you wish, that are going to help them to grow. The motto that we use for our major is, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And it is all about change and transformation. It is all about showing people a pathway and setting lights along the way that allows them to actually reach destinations that they never thought were possible. So focusing only on the positives and celebrating that, well, then you are you're running into the danger of maybe not breaking out of a certain mold that perhaps are not so great behaviors. But I would agree in the sense that focusing on the hard skills itself is definitely not the way forward, because what we see is that the hard skills carry you only for the next 2 or 3 years. But when you're thinking about the soft skills, those are things that are really carrying you through for the next few decades of your career.
Thank you very much, Dr. Philippe. That was indeed a robust presentation, and we thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule.
You're very welcome.
To speak to us. We wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much.